Hello and welcome to our live interview with the creators behind the Torchkeepers audiobook. I'm Heidi Olson, and I'm a
Hello
director
and
here at Storytellers. I have with me today Hosanna Emily and Anna True. Ladies, can you introduce yourselves? We'll start with Hosanna.
okay, yeah. I'm Hosanna. I'm the author of The Torch Keepers. Um, yeah, so it was an amazing process, just the whole creation of that. God just worked in so many ways. And it was just such an honor to be work
With
through
the creators
Storytellers
behind the
and
Torchkeepers
be
audiobook.
able
I
to
have
see
with
their
me, I'm
heart. And yeah, that was just an amazing experience.
And I'm Anna True. I narrated the book. And um, Me and Hosanna were friends before this, so that's kind of how we made the connection to start on the audiobook. And it was awesome working with her and then also working with storytellers as well.
cool. So to start off, can you guys kind of give us some background about yourselves and like how you met, how this audiobook came to be?
Yeah. So I used to be neighbors with Anna, and that's how we first originally met. She was like my childhood best friend, and we played in the woods every single day. So that's how we personally met. I started writing, getting serious about it when I was maybe 10 or so. I wrote this short story, and my mom complimented me on it, and I realized for the first time that I could write something that actually like made people look at life different and made them enjoy something. So that was a really neat experience. And that just kind of went crazy. And God just used that to bring so many changes. Um, yeah, so I'll let you keep going, Anna.
I think we've known each other for like, I don't know, 17-ish years, something like that.
Hmm.
So we grew up together and for me, I've loved stories since I was little. You know, our parents really encouraged us to read and stuff, and specifically audio. I listened to like Adventures in Odyssey and Your Story Hour and different things like that growing up. And that really, I think, I really enjoyed that a lot. And so that's one reason I kind of went that way. Also, Lamplighter Theater, I started listening to that when I got older, and that was just something that really intrigued me. And I love acting in general, and so yeah, I that's when I kind of started looking more into voice acting. Um, it's just been really impactful in my life, and a great way to like hear a story but still be able to do the dishes or
Yeah.
drive a car or do something like that. So yeah.
Yeah, I actually remember when we were little, Anna would recommend all these audiobooks to us. And I'm a physical book reader, and I don't have time to sit down and listen to an audiobook. So she would ramble on and on about like her favorite audiobooks, and I never got a chance to listen to many of them. But I feel like through that process, you were able to like practice developing your own voice, especially in acting. And I read a lot of books. So it seems like God worked it all out.
Yeah, I think it was easier for me because I didn't have as many younger siblings, so the older siblings would be quiet and we could listen to something, and it's a little bit easier for us to listen to something while we were cleaning the house or doing this and that. So
True.
yeah.
Yeah.
So what was the inspiration, Hosanna? Like where did this story even start? Where did the Torch Keepers come from?
Yeah, so I actually didn't even realize where it came from until after the book was completely written. But when I was going through the process of writing it, I realized it started from just this little story I had read maybe when I was 13 or 14. It was just a news story about two beautiful teenage girls that decided to leave their homes and join a terrorist group. And I remember just reading that article and being shocked and absolutely stunned that these gorgeous girls would choose to do something like that. Like, I could have walked past them on the street. And I just remember being like, just trying to process what was going through their minds, what happened in their heart that would make them choose those decisions. And I kind of forgot about it. It just sat in the back of my mind. And a few years later, I was taking a college course that required me to write a short story. So I sat down and wrote this story. It had a complete different name. The character was a completely different person. But I wrote the short story, put it away. But the people that were giving me critiques for the class told me that there's two of them that stood up and they were like, "Yeah, you should turn this into a larger work." And I laughed at them secretly because I was working on a historical fiction novel and I totally did not have time to write this, and there were so many plot holes and I had no idea where it would go. So I tucked that away, put it in my bookshelf, and forgot about it until one day I woke up and I felt God like literally pouring things into me, pouring all these ideas and all these concepts for the story. And the book was written, like half the book at least was written before I ever actually sat down to write it. It was like he plugged all the pieces together. So when Storytellers happened to have a 1 month, I think it was a 1 month writing it and then 1 month editing it, that's what I ended up doing. They had this contest for a 2 month novel challenge, and I prayed about it, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna sit down and try it. But there was this big if, and it was for the challenge. There was these prompts or things you had to include in the story. So if it didn't fit, I was not gonna do it because I wasn't gonna change the story because God had already given it to me. And I got the email that morning and it all fit together perfect. And I was just so thrilled. In the 2 months I ended up writing the rough draft, and God really just like plugged it all together, read the word and feel bad because instead of reading the book, when I read the Bible, I got story ideas. And I felt like I was a terrible person because I wasn't reading the Bible and gaining stuff about God as much that he was giving me all these story ideas. But then through the writing of it, that drew me so much closer to him. And he used the biblical stories to teach me so much. So, in a nutshell, that's kind of where the idea came from.
That's cool. So on that one thing that you said, there was, if I'm remembering correctly, the elements were fake teeth, breaking a window, and the theme was forgiving yourself. Is that correct?
I actually can't remember the theme,
Okay.
but yeah, I remember the fake teeth. I was kind of struggling with that. How do I include fake teeth in a story?
What was your thought process there? And can you share with our audience a little bit about like how you ended up including those elements?
Yeah, so I didn't actually change much of the story to go around the elements. I remember breaking a window was pretty easy because the story kind of there was some battles in the story, and so that was a pretty easy element to add in. The fake teeth were very weird. I was sitting there like, how do I have fake teeth in a story without that seeming so odd and irrelevant? Um, but I had children in the book, so I ended up just having one of the children pretend they had fake teeth in a scene where the main character loses her first tooth. Um, so yeah, I feel like maybe someone would read that and think it's completely random, but I fit that element in. And I was happy about that. So yeah, that was a very fun thing though, because I wouldn't have had to think of that without the challenge. I would have just sat down and written it, and I liked the particular challenge of having to sit down and like think deeper on the story.
Cool. So Anna, jumping to you, was this your first audiobook that you have ever done, or have you done audio dramas, books, any type of voice acting before?
A couple of things here and there for like voiceover in like a movie, very short, minor things. But yeah, this is my first time I'd done anything of this magnitude, and the first time doing an audiobook. Yeah.
Cool. So what would you do it again? How was your experience with it?
I definitely do it again. So there's a love and a hate to it. When I first started out, the first few weeks, I was just like, ugh. Because in my brain, okay, an audiobook is gonna be so much fun. I'm gonna get to do all these voices and all this creative stuff and acting and all this. And then I go and it is fun, but then I have to like make sure I pronounce things correctly or else I have to go and redo it. And then I have to research a lot of editing because I'm not an editor. I don't do a lot of technical things. So I had to research, like compression, equalization, all that kind of stuff because I'm editing my own audio, and research microphones and different things like that. And so that was kind of like, ugh, I don't enjoy it. But once I pushed through that, and just was able to learn about it and comprehend it a little bit better, it was easier to do it. And the more I did it, it became easier. So that part wasn't quite as fun, but I loved being able to bring the book to life in a new way, and getting to create voices for characters and just, yeah, it was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed it.
So what about the voices that you did? You did a lot of different voices in this one, and you did a great job. What if I know, like, especially the guys' voices can be hard to do as a female. Was there any particular guy that kind of like threw you for a loop trying to figure out how to voice him?
Probably it was hard to feel like so there was two older or two primary and older men characters, and their voices were probably a little bit harder because it was father and then Kadaddy. They had a decent amount of lines in there, especially father. And it is hard to keep that low voice for an extended period of time. So that was one thing that I ran into that I was like hard. Like I could feel my voice getting kind of worn out as I was doing the deeper voices and stuff. And just trying to find, you don't want to go so deep that it sounds weird, but you want to make sure that it's definitely definable from that you can tell it apart from all the other male characters that are a little bit higher and stuff. So yeah.
What in general, like, do you have a favorite character that you got to do?
As far as like favorite voice to do, you mean like a favorite
Yeah.
character? That probably either Rakim or Tionne, because I love doing accents. So with their characters, I got to do kind of like a it's fantasy, so you don't have to be specific, but it's kind of like a Middle Eastern-ish accent, and that was just a lot of fun. And they're very, you get to do more like anger and tension, and with their voices some, and that can just be fun to play around with. So yeah, probably Rakim or Tionne's voice.
Cool. So how about for both of you guys, like working together, like to create an audiobook? Obviously, like this was kind of a new thing for both of you. How did it go working together? What was kind of the process of Hosanna, you communicating your vision, and then Anna, you like coming up with your vision and communicating back and forth? How did that kind of go?
You want to start, Anna?
For me it was really nice to do it with a friend for the first audiobook because I was still trying to figure out exactly what I'm doing. And Hosanna was super encouraging, and yeah, it was really easy. I mean, we'd email back and forth with like I'd send her every chapter, and it was like, what do you think of this? Do you think there's anything that needs to be changed, or do you like this character voice? It should be changed a little bit. And she gave me a lot of leeway with the characters' voices. We kind of went over what their character was, so what their accent might kind of be, or what their voice might kind of sound like, just based off their character. So yeah, it was a lot of fun. It was really relaxed, and yeah, it was awesome.
I'm glad you feel that way because I felt so bad. Like anytime I needed something changed, I was like, oh no, I'm making her work harder. But yeah, I think it was a great experience. I would totally have her do any future books if she wanted to. I think one of the biggest things was before we actually sat down to record, Anna and I were able to get together at the only coffee shop around, basically, and just go through like, okay, what is the vision for this? What are your ideas on different accents? So we listened to a bunch of like YouTube clips on different accents around the world, found ones that totally wouldn't work, and a few that we kind of, altered to fit the different characters. And that helped a lot because I knew that Anna knew what my heart was for the characters. We discussed like who these characters were, what they meant to me, and who their character represented. And so when I actually was sitting down listening to her recordings, there were times I was just blown away because somehow this little story I wrote was like coming alive in a complete different way. Yeah. So there were times I just saw the book so differently. I found mistakes I wish I could change, but I was so amazed that God can take something that I made, but then he can use other people to totally just inspire me way deeper than I've ever been through that book. So that was just super neat.
What are you guys hoping for as far as the impact of this project? Like, what is kind of your hope as far as where the story goes from here?
I guess for the audiobook itself, I just personally want it to be an avenue for people to explore the story. So I don't know, I've never sat down and come up with like my main goal for it. I just want it to be a unique way for people to experience the characters, the lessons that they learned. Um, and with the story itself, like I have a lot of goals for future books, which maybe will be audiobooks, maybe not. I don't know where God will take those. But yeah, I just really want the audiobook itself to just like be a tool that people can use, that people can enjoy, maybe just to take their minds off things, or maybe that'll just really inspire them.
Yeah. Yeah, for me, I read the book a while back, when it first came out, I guess in September of last year, I guess.
Yeah,
Or
I mean,
two.
you read it before it came out, though.
Oh, that's right. Okay.
Yeah,
That's right. I did. I think I was a beta reader or something like that.
yeah.
Um, so I hadn't read it in a long time, and just rereading it, going through the audiobook, I was like, wow, this is really like there's some really good lessons and an impactful redemptive story to it. So yeah, just what Hosanna was saying, just hoping that it does impact people who listen to it, the truths that are in it, and encourage people. And two, for me, as far as doing this is my first audiobook, so I'd like it to open up a path where I could do more, because I really enjoy doing it, and I really enjoy being able to bring stories that are impactful, and encouraging and inspiring, to life in this different and new way, kind of.
That's really cool. Okay, so now I kind of want to like go into the actual story itself and ask you guys about some of the characters and the storyline. First of all, starting with the whole Kadira story. I'm just curious, where did the idea for like the family name as the first name come from? Because that's something that's kind of unique to the story and kind of fun.
Yeah. So that was a totally random thing that came way after the book was actually first written in a draft. My family hosts international students that from Asia. So this year we were able to host a Korean student and a Japanese student who came to the college at our local city, and we were able to just host them for dinner, take them out to different like music performances, kind of be their family while they're in the U.S. And during writing this, I had a lot of girls that I would talk to and just be able to hear their culture. And one of the things one of them mentioned to me is that in their culture, when they tell me their name, they're actually telling me their last name. I think I'm probably going to get this wrong, but she was saying how their family name is actually their first name, and her last name is what we would call her first name. So they kind of have it swapped, while in America, we have first, middle, and last names. And yeah, so in Japanese, they don't actually have a middle name usually. So we tried to give our students middle names for them. But I thought that I was just thinking a lot about their culture during that time, wanting to tie in like, so what's unique about cultures around the world that I totally wouldn't think of being, an American my entire life. So that was just some different culture things I try to tie in. And it was neat exploring the atmosphere that they live in.
Gotcha. Was it hard writing a story, just like the journey that year goes on? Like, was it hard writing about a character who just feels so unworthy for so long? Like, how was that?
I don't know. I didn't feel like it was very hard. I think almost all the struggles that characters faced in the book are ones that I have on somewhat gone through. So her feeling like of unworthiness, I feel like is one that like sometimes it's easy to feel like that to God. Like God has done so many amazing things in my life, and looking just looking, I guess, at who I am honestly inside. I'm not a perfect human being. And so just kind of exploring that with Kadira, but on a larger, more obvious scale, I felt just it reminded me more than being depressed or struggling with the struggle she faced. It really just reminded me of what grace means, and how everyone out there has a story, but no one's story is worse or better than another's. That there's grace for everyone. So, yeah, I would say her like exploring that story wasn't really difficult for me. I think it helped. And I want to walk around looking at people and realizing they're all different characters in their own stories. And I get to be a part of that. And that's just really huge.
What about for you, Anna? What about reading that character and kind of not living out her journey, but as an actor acting out her journey?
Yeah, it was yeah, there's a lot of intense moments and a lot of like you said, she feels unworthy and yeah, just it's always interesting to do the different characters and to really try to feel what they're feeling. I think with Kadira, I felt that way too. Like her story of redemption was really, I think, even more meaningful to me when I read it this time. Just looking at my own life and realizing that I have things that, you know, I'm not a good person, and it's only by His grace that I have these good, you know, I have anything that is good in me. And so yeah, it was impactful to me to like to go through the whole story and see the change that happens and see sometimes I feel like, oh, it's hard to think that I could be forgiven for certain things, you know, on a, obviously a little bit of a lower scale than her, but still, you know, I've done, you know, things and just seeing how she struggled with what she did and how she accepted the full forgiveness for her sin and for all that she'd done was just really, really awesome to get to follow her character and to express all of those emotions that she was feeling.
Mm-hmm.
Was there any character in particular that was harder to write or to act as far as just like the emotions of them or just like the character at all?
I think
I honestly can say I love every single character in there. I get mad when people look at the book and they pick out the villains and don't like them because I love every single villain and every one of them has this beautiful backstory that they just don't know yet. So I can't say there's any of them that I really didn't enjoy creating. Yeah. I think Tionne was a little bit more difficult because he has some I wanted to include parallels with him to some biblical themes. But in the middle of the book, I kind of switched everything. So he was kind of like a character that kind of tumbled around for a little bit before I figured out who he really was in the story. So that was a little bit harder. But even though he's a villain, I love him, and he has so much of like a deeper meaning than any of the readers are going to know. So there's my 2 cents.
Yeah, as far as the emotion of characters, like if any of them were hard to portray, not really. I mean, there's a lot of varying emotions in this book. So it was for me, it's just kind of fun to get to play that so many different levels, so many different emotions. It's kind of fun. You get to do anger, which you know you don't usually do in real life. Yeah, I don't know. It was because if they were all, you know, level, not a ton of emotion, it wouldn't be quite as fun. And it is harder because you have to make sure that you do put that emotion so that your listeners can hear it. But it's just fun for me to create those different emotions and make sure that I get the right level and everything.
Mm-hmm.
I want to kind of follow the thing that you alluded to there, Hosanna. What is the deeper meaning behind? Is it Tionne? Am I getting that pronounced? Okay, yeah. Cool. It was helpful to listen to Anna's reading of it because I was like, I know how to pronounce characters' names now.
Yeah, I'm afraid maybe I kind of lectured Anna sometimes and was like, okay, everyone that reads this book is going to pronounce this wrong, but you have to pronounce it right because you're doing the audiobook.
Yeah. Hard. That was probably one thing that we communicated the most about was I'm like, okay, there's a new name in here and I have no idea how to pronounce it. Help me.
Well, there's one chapter I listed the city's names on a map. I think I had maybe 6 or 7 names, and Anna messaged me and she's like, There's a lot of names here. I want to make sure I'm getting them all right, but she got them all right. So I was super impressed. But yes, about Tionne. Um, so it was harder because I kind of had a lot of different ideas of where he could go. I feel like with most books, they have the villain somewhat represent like Satan or the biblical devil, like that kind of picture. And that's where I originally started, was that concept of him. Um, but then just things changed during the story as I got feedback from other readers and things that didn't make sense that I started changing. I made the world have more of a history, where before, like in the first draft, it was more like all squeezed together in one time frame. So during all of that, I kind of realized that Tionne wasn't, he was a character like everyone else, and he wasn't above time like the king was. So obviously then he couldn't be like that type of figure, because the enemy is here all the time and he's been here from, nearly the beginning. So I kind of switched him over more to represent, I kind of view him as representing sin overall. In the book, I don't think it's not like mentioned a ton in book one, but he is referred to as like he actually was kind of, his life was kind of cultivated by the previous prince. So there's actually been a lot of princes in the past, and they're all fighting against the king. And I kind of view that as just the continual struggle of sin in our lives. And it's not really this one person in time, but every single generation has the same struggle. And I wanted to show that through his life, and just to see that there's always this battle raging around us, and it's here. I mean, so I don't know if that makes sense, but that's kind of where I was going with that. And I think it'll be a little more fleshed out in book two, maybe. So we'll see where that all goes.
Cool. Before we have an audience question that came in, but before we get to that, can you tell us, so this is a part of a series. Can you you know how many books will be in it, or what we can look forward to next?
Yeah, so my desire right now is that it'll be a duology, which is just 2 books. This would be the first, and then I'll write the sequel. However, the more I go through characters and explore their lives, I realize they all have stories. And me being an author, I want to tell everyone all of their stories. So what I imagine seeing, if these plans end up happening, is I would have a 2-book series, but then I will have maybe some separate smaller books just exploring the different characters, where they came from, just like their history, so you can understand them on a deeper level, and just see all the different ways that their histories have grown them into the person they ended up being. So I don't know how many books that would be. Right now I have 2 other books kind of churning in my head. But yeah, I really have no idea.
That's exciting, though. So we could look forward to more books eventually.
Yeah.
All right. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was saying I'm really excited about it too.
All right. The question from the audience is, what was it like when you first started getting reviews back for the book, and how do you handle bad reviews? And I don't know how much you've seen, as far as the audiobook is pretty new getting out there too, but you have thoughts on that too.
Yeah, so far I've only heard very positive comments on the audiobook, so I can't really say anything about that yet. I guess it kind of goes back to, I wrote the book in the 2 months, and even in those months, I gave the book away to different people, and I was asking them for their opinions. And there were definitely good opinions and some negative ones where they wanted me to change things. And the negative critiques are always hard. However, I felt like with this specific book, everyone that gave me feedback did it very appropriately. And I really appreciated that. Something I've heard is like making it a sandwich, where you have positive critiques, like positive encouragement, critiques, and then more positivity. And I felt like everyone who critiqued it was very good at giving helpful critiques. So obviously I appreciated that a lot. And I didn't have any really hard reviews, I suppose, until a few weeks before it was published. I did have a few ARC readers, which are people that I give them a copy of the book before it's actually published so they can leave reviews. And one of them said they didn't like the book, and they wrote a long negative review on it. And yeah, like reading that, and I've had other ones that said things like the book didn't make sense, I didn't like the main character, just things like that. And they're hard, but you also just have to learn to not, like, I didn't write this book for them. I wrote this book for me and for Jesus, and if it encourages someone else, that's a plus. So that's been the biggest thing. Just if there's negative critiques, I want, like, yeah, I'm going to read them probably, but I don't want to look at them and have that define me because I didn't write the book for them. That book has already completely changed who I am. So it's already done its purpose. God has used it to draw me closer to him. And so yeah, I say you just have to look at the critiques and realize that's not who you are. And it's okay. People aren't going to like the book, but that's okay because I didn't write it for them. And yeah, I'm already satisfied with where God has taken it. So I don't know if Anna has thoughts to add on to that.
Yeah, I mean, as far as the audiobook goes, I don't think we've really it hasn't been out there that long. So I haven't really had a lot of reviews on it.
Gotcha. Yeah, you're always gonna have people who enjoyed it and people who didn't, not the negative along with the positive.
Yeah.
We have a comment from Eva Barlow. Hopefully I'm pronouncing that correctly. And she just said that she loves this author. So there you go, Hosanna.
Well, thank you. I love her too.
So what are you hoping then to have Anna do the next audiobook for the next one in the series?
I would say if she's up to it, I'm totally throwing it on her lap. She was just amazing to work with, and I loved her accents. So
yeah, and it was awesome because it's like I gave it to you because I want you to be happy with it, so you have to give feedback, and I wanted feedback on how what changed. Like that was awesome. But then too, like you were always so encouraging and like, I love this and you did great on this, but could you tweak this? And like, yeah, it was really awesome and easy to communicate because we know each other. So yeah. And it's just fun because it's fantasy, so you can kind of play around and do whatever you want to, as long as you keep them consistent throughout the entire book. You can kind of do whatever.
Yeah. One thing I did notice that I'm not sure how I'm going to do it differently next time, but I noticed listening to Anna's reading of it, like the different ways words sounded together, I did notice things that I would change in the future. Just like maybe how two words sounded right next to each other, or if I had one word too close to the same word in a sentence or something. I feel like it's really important for authors to read their books aloud and know what it's going to sound like. So in the future, I don't know, see, maybe Anna and I will work on that process before the second book's actually published. Or
all the words that I had a hard time saying.
I know, you need to get me a list of those so I can not put them in the next book for you. Oh no.
Do you have any stories with that, Anna, as far as I know sometimes after a long day of reading, like the silliest word can be tripping you up? Do you have any stories with that?
Yeah, so it's it takes sitting down and reading a book and recording it and then going back and listening to it as you're reading the book to realize that sometimes you just like read a sentence completely different than how it was written. You like flip-flop words. You think you saw this because you weren't paying exact attention. And yeah, and like some of the like simplest words or simplest things can be hard to say, like hurrying was very hard for me to make sure I said it pronounced enough. And there are other words that were just like whatever words that it's just like, or like the city sat. There was something like the small city sat. I don't know, something. And I was just like, I got to make sure I say these very honest. So yeah. There's definitely I have trouble in my normal life. with mumbling sometimes. So this was a great opportunity for me to focus on my enunciation. So yeah.
How important to you were the backstories, Anna, as far like I know Hosanna was talking about, you know, the characters' backstories and how it'd be fun to dive into those. How important was for you to know those backstories so you could bring these characters to life?
Like I think when me and Hosanna first got together, like I said, at a coffee shop, and um, I think just through talking with Hosanna about just the book and various things, I kind of learned at random times more a little bit about the backstories of the characters, and then two, just being like, okay, this character, it has these quality traits, so make sure that whenever you're speaking, you kind of add those to their voice and keep that in mind as they're speaking. If one's more curt, or he kind of has a chip on his shoulder, or at this point in the story she's kind of hardened to things, but then she becomes softer, just kind of talking through that, and just bits and pieces of the backstory. That was really helpful, just to kind of lay it out on the table, talk to Hosanna about the characters and what she was expecting, and what they were supposed to be like at different points in the story.
Gotcha. What about Rakim? Can we talk about Rakim? Like he's a pretty important character here. What were your thoughts as you were writing him or voicing him?
If you know, Anna, you can go ahead, because
Okay.
I have a lot of thoughts about Rakim.
So yeah, Rakim was a lot of fun because he has some very different, like at times when he's with Kadira, he's softer and kinder, and then he can be hard, or he can be angry, or toward his brother especially, and just exploring, like, I know some people don't like him because he is a rebel and he did bring Kadira into all this stuff and everything. But for me, I kind of became sympathetic toward him because it's like I can understand, because he wants to impress his brother and he thinks that it's really cool and he wants to live up to everything that his brother is expecting, and he wants to be this strong person, and he's really struggling with how the king could let certain things happen to him. So that was just really fun. He was a fun character because he had so many different emotions, and I liked him even though he is kind of a bad guy, because you could just understand how he got where he was.
Yeah, that's pretty much how I see him. Where one of the first people that read my book were my family, and we all kind of sat around at different times and talked about characters. And they would say things like, "I can't stand Rakim," and I would just be like so defensive, like, "I love Rakim. He is the best character." uh, but yeah, I just really related to him a lot. I didn't have his story before writing the book. I had all of Kadira's story outlined in my head. Like, it was all written out. I didn't have to change anything, really. But Rakim was harder because I knew he was part of the story, but when I started writing, I didn't know how. So it took me, I think it was like 3 or 4 weeks in, where I had written all of Kadira's, and I needed to plug in Rakim's. And I didn't know what his story was. I didn't really know who he was. And I remember sitting down and needing to write the first chapter and being like, "Okay, God, I need you to tell me what this is about, because I'm writing this. I need to write a chapter today, and I don't know where it's going." So I read a chapter in Genesis, and God just gave me like his story, and it was really neat. But I just have always really related with Rakim a lot. Even though he's a negative character in some lights, I know his heart because I am the writer, but I know where he's coming from, and I know that even though he's made mistakes, that's not where he wants to be, and that's not the person he wants to be. So it's kind of helped me dig deeper, and I just want to look at people around me and not see them for the surface things, what they do. I want to just be able to know there's so much more in their heart, and there's so much of backstory that I don't know. So I'm really excited. I'm already thinking about Rakim's life in book 2, and a lot happens, and I'm in the same place where I have a beginning and an end, but I don't know what happens all in the middle. And I'm really excited because I feel like I can just really relate to him, and I love the person he is, even though he has a lot of negative characters aspects. So
One of my favorite characters, if I can throw in some personal bias here, was Nora. I really loved like her sweet innocence and just like the presence that she brought to the story too. Is there like something that she represented in the story?
I think I've always wanted to write about a blind character. So that was part of it. I've always loved the concept of having to describe to someone what the world looks like. I always thought that was really neat. Maybe that's from like watching Little House on the Prairie and seeing Mary go through the blindness and experiencing her story. So I've just always been kind of like, I want to write that, but Nora especially happened. She became part of the story especially because I have a little sister who happens to be Nora's age, and who happens to have almost the same qualities. Um, so I kind of wrote my little sister into the book, um, changed her hair color, made her blind. But I feel like a lot of that kind of flowed from me having a little sister in the same place. So I'm able to more understand their language and how they're acting and the things that tickle them to death. So that made it really fun. Um, Even like after I let a family member read it, he was like, I feel like you put a blind, like my little sister in there, and you just made her blind, and it's the same person. So that was just really fun. Also, like going throughout my day, when my siblings say something that is just really funny, I will tend to like write it down and go to my book and put it in there because that's how I work. And since I have 9 siblings, there's a lot of just random things that are said sometimes that I want to record. So, yeah.
Cool. Also on her name, like her name means light, correct? Remember? Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you kind of come up with a language for these characters for this world, or how did that process happen?
See, that's hard because there was a lot of different characters and I came up with their names all over the place. So I can't remember specifically when I came up with hers. There were several characters where I would take maybe 2 like Hebrew names or different names and kind of mix match them into the name I wanted and with the meanings I wanted. There were some that I had to like completely create and create their meanings as well. Like Rakim's, I created the meaning for his name. But I'm a very firm believer that people are going to often be very influenced by what their name means. And so that was really important to me. I wanted the world itself to have a name meaning. I want each character to have a meaning to their name. So I tried to like write them all down and have that represent who they are. So sometimes that was like, going through a baby name book of kind of ethnic names and finding one there. And sometimes it was mixing and matching names to sound the way I wanted them to or be spelled the way. But that was a very fun part of it.
That's so cool. What would you say for both of you, like Anna, who's been an influence to you in your acting journey, and Hosanna, who's been an influence, like writers, actors, people in your life, like who's kind of influenced you to get to the point where you are?
Well, as far as like just people like around me, my mom has always been a really big encourager. We were homeschooled, and so we kind of were able like to focus more on things that we were talented in or that we had an interest in school. And so mom really encouraged that. And so yeah, I became interested in acting. I started focusing more on film acting at first. Just when I was young, just through movies that inspired me. And I don't know if I necessarily have a specific filmmaker or actor who inspired me, just several different ones throughout my growing up years that just inspired me to I love stories and just to be able to share them with people. Stories that can do what stories did for me growing up. They inspired me, they encouraged me, they challenged me. And I read a ton growing up. So yeah, just I'd say specifically my mom and family, but specifically my mom, and then also just all the different books and movies that I've watched that have just told beautiful stories that have, yeah, impacted my life.
Yeah, it's definitely true. I've read my entire life, and there's been so many books that just changed the way I view the world. I think that's been a big thing is the books that inspire me make me want to write something to inspire someone else. So, like during the Torch Keepers, I was reading a book called A Time to Die by Nadine Brandeis, and that book was so powerful. I remember reading it though and being like, I wish I could write this book. Why can't I not write this book? Um, but there's been a lot of books like that, and also like the Chronicles of Narnia have had a big just influence in my writing and in who I am as a person. And if I listed every person that's been involved in my writing, I wouldn't remember everyone's names like on a list because there's been so many of them. But definitely my family has been the biggest support just throughout my high school, throughout my middle school, encouraging me to write, being the first critiques, giving me the first critiques, editing my book. That's been amazing. And outside my family, there's been dozens and dozens. Um, One of the biggest was my
In
friend Aaliyah
acting,
Harper,
I started
who
focusing more on
encouraged
film
me to start
acting.
my blog, which is kind of what stemmed all my writing. She designed the Torch Keepers cover. She designed the Mystery Midnight Trespassers cover as well. And she's just always been my kind of my backup. She knows my writing style better than I do, I think. And she knows how to tell me what I need to know, how to critique me positively. Um, and that's just been a huge blessing to see how I've seen her writing grow and she's been able to encourage me in mine. And yeah, so she, among so many others, Anna's always been like super encouraging in writing. I love sitting down and like tearing apart even my own stories with her. That's been really neat. So I really couldn't just list a few.
Yeah.
I know, like one thing that I'm sorry, Anna, were you gonna say something?
Oh no, yeah, totally. Just yeah, there's just a lot of people, and specifically with this audiobook, not just like acting in general, but specifically with this audiobook, Hosanna was a great encourager to me because I was like, I don't know if this sounds good. You listen to it. And so yeah, it was really awesome to be able to have that. Like, yes, keep going. It sounds good. You're doing a good job. That was really, yeah, encouraging for this one.
And if I didn't know if it sounded good, I had people I started sending it to and be like, do you think this sounds okay? Mainly like my little brother would listen to it because he's in audio too. And he'd be like, yeah, why did you think that sounded weird? And I was like, okay, let's go with it.
Very hard because I would listen to it and I'd be like, ooh, I think that word sounds weird. Mom, do you think this word sounds weird? She's like, what word? I'm like, and
Sometimes after listening to your own work, you start to question things that nobody else will have.
Yes.
How specifically, I know like a lot of people ask as they're getting into different storytelling fields, how do you find your voice, like your style in your writing and your acting?
I think for me specifically, I feel like The Torch Keepers was the first thing I wrote where I felt like I found my voice. So in that area, I would say it just took me a lot of writing to find out who I actually was as a writer. So the more practice I had, like for my first book, I wrote it more for children, and my voice was a lot younger back then because I drafted it when I was an early teen. And now, as I've written, I heard you have to write like 100,000 words or something to actually find your voice. And so that's kind of what I go off of because my second book ended up being around 100,000 words. And so after that, I feel like I actually found out more of who I was as a writer and how I'm allowed to break rules if I want to, and how I'm allowed to stretch things and find my own style, um, which is hard sometimes because I feel like my writing style is very different from everyone's I've read. I've only found very few people that I feel like actually wrote similar to my style. So that's just been kind of interesting because I found the way I like to write, but it's not really super common in books. So just being confident in the voice God's given me.
Mm.
Yeah. For me, yeah, I've done acting for quite a while, so I think part of it is doing it a lot, and getting input from other people, and also having for me, I guess pride can be something that keeps you from stepping out and making uh, doing different things, doing new things, or trying new things, or being a little more unique because you're afraid of what people might think or what they're going to say because this and that, you know. So being humble, being willing to take critique, not let it get to you, but be willing to hear feedback from people, but also just yeah, practice, and through that process, finding it and being okay with stepping out of your comfort zone and doing new things, or just being confident in your voice and not feeling like you have to copycat other people,
Mm-hmm.
and really just putting time and effort into your acting and into just honing it and stuff.
Yeah. And also kind of stemming off what you said, definitely not trying to copy other people because I've definitely been in that place where someone does a good job and I'm like, I wish I could
Yeah.
just steal your book and put my name on it. um, but also, like, there's been certain books I've read that have really changed my writing style. I know it's definitely been influenced by Anne Voskamp. I was reading one of her books and things about her writing stood out to me that I started practicing. And then Nadine Brandy's obviously was also a big influencer too. So I think kind of studying your craft more definitely does help you develop your voice as well.
Mm. So as we're coming down to the end here, is there anywhere that people can find you guys online? Like Hosanna, I know you mentioned a blog at one point. Anna, is there any place that people can kind of follow you and see what work you guys are doing?
For me, the primary places are I have a Facebook page, and then also an Instagram, which is uh, True Hope 97. So those are the two primary places.
Cool.
Yeah. And for me, I'm not on Facebook, but I'm on Instagram as Hosanna Emily, and my blog is Having a Heart Like His at blogspot.com. So those are the main two places you can find me or through emailing me.
Yeah, same here. Email works too.
Cool. And where can we find Torch Keepers?
I'm not actually, it's all over the place, I feel like. I know it's mainly on Barnes and Nobles and Amazon as, hardcover and paperback. There's several other sites it's on. But for the audiobook, I believe it's on iTunes right now, and we're currently getting it on more sites. So
Yeah.
those are definitely the places to grab it.
Yeah,
So
I think I
Google
saw
the.
somewhere. Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
Yeah, iTunes for the audiobook, iTunes, and then there were two other places that I'm not super familiar with, but I think it was Kobo.com and
Was it Nook?
Ribbit. But
Okay, yeah, I think so.
Cool.
those are lesser known to me, so.
Okay. So if you Google the Torch Keepers, hopefully you'll find the audiobooks, and there's a hardcover and a softcover out there too.
Yeah.
So as our final question here, what are your plans from here? Or are you guys involved in projects? What's kind of coming up? Besides, obviously, there's a second book in the works, but anything else that's kind of coming up for you guys?
I'd say for me, well, God changed my plans because I don't have a laptop at the moment. But I'm kind of just waiting on it to all work out. I have a book that's already written that needs to be edited, and two more that just need to be written. And God's given me a nonfiction book that I may start working on during this time of quarantine because I have nothing better to do. So I really just feel myself all over the place, and I have a lot of dreams, and I'm just kind of seeing which ones God takes and decides to use. But yeah, until I know those big projects, I keep up like with Instagram posts and blog posts and things like that. Running through the woods, all those fun stuff.
Cool.
Yeah, for me, well, I have some like as far as things that I'm doing right now, I have some projects that are coming out, but they're film related. As far as audio, I want to pursue that more, pursue doing audiobooks and different things like that more. So right now I'm focusing on trying to get a little home studio kind of set up because for this one I was in a closet, which isn't the most comfortable place to be for a whole entire. So trying to get that set up, trying to fix some technical things with my laptop and stuff, and then from there, just trying to figure out how I can start doing more audiobooks and possibly contacting some different authors about that because it's hard when you start doing an audiobook and you're like, ooh, I love that book. They don't have an audiobook. I love that book. They don't have an audiobook. So yeah, just getting things ready so that I can pursue that more.
Great. Cool. Well, so you can continue to follow Hosanna and Anna and see what projects they continue to walk in. Thank you so much, ladies, for being here today, and I hope to see a lot more from you in the future.
Thank you all so much.
Thank you so much, Heidi.
All right. Thanks for joining us for the Torch Keepers live interview. Join us tomorrow as we start some film screenings there on our SE Treehouse page. All right. Thanks for coming.